6 weeks ago, filling a diesel tank cost roughly £79. Today, it costs £105, not over a year, not gradually, in 6 weeks. And while that hits millions of households every time they pull into a forecourt, Shell and BP are on course to collect an additional £5 billion in profit this year. Not total profit, the extra, generated by the same price surge that is draining your budget faster than at any point since 2022. According to the RAC Foundation, drivers across the UK have collectively spent an additional £307 million on fuel since late February. That is £307 million pulled directly out of household budgets, out of weekly shopping money, out of savings that were already stretched. Petrol now averages 158.2 pence per litre. Diesel sits at 191.1 pence, just 9 pence from the all-time record. And if you are filling up on a motorway, the picture is worse. Forecourts along the M61 are posting diesel above 200 pence per litre. A station in Chelsea, London has charged 264.9 pence for a single litre of diesel. Those are the prices people are paying right now. And here is what those same weeks look like from the other side. Goldman Sachs projects Shell's net income for 2026 at $26.7 billion, revised upward by $3.7 billion. BP's forecast has been lifted by $2.8 billion to $12.9 billion. Goldman's analysts have noted that their BP earnings forecast now sits roughly 82% above what the rest of the market expects. They have stated that 2026 could mirror the profit conditions of 2022, the year both companies posted some of the largest earnings in their corporate histories. You pay more, they earn more, and the mechanics of how that transfer works are worth understanding because none of this happened by accident. So what actually caused prices to move this fast? Because it was not simply a case of costs drifting upward. Something structural broke. In late February 2026, the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway carrying roughly 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas, was disrupted. Brent crude, which had been sitting at approximately $73 per barrel on February the 27th, surged past $100 within days and touched intraday highs above $117. The International Energy Agency described it as one of the most severe supply disruptions in the history of global oil markets. The effect on UK forecourts was immediate. The RAC reported that March 2026 produced the largest monthly pump price increases on record. Diesel climbed 40 pence per litre in a single month. Petrol rose 20 pence. In northern Scotland, West Wales and Cornwall, diesel reached 195 pence and above. Parts of rural Scotland saw 217 pence. But here is the part that made the damage so much worse. The UK was already exposed before any of this started. In April 2025, the Grangemouth refinery in Scotland, the country's oldest, processed its last barrel of crude oil. It had supplied 65% of Scotland's refined fuel and accounted for roughly 14% of UK refining capacity. Around 400 workers lost their jobs. The site became an import terminal. That same year, the Prax Lindsey refinery in Lincolnshire also shut down. The UK was left with 4 operating refineries, the lowest number in modern history. Fuels Industry UK has warned that those remaining facilities pay up to £400 million a year in carbon costs that overseas competitors do not face. Each closure deepens the country's reliance on imported fuel, and each disruption to global shipping, like the one unfolding right now, turns that reliance into higher prices at the pump for everyone. That is the system working as designed, not for the people buying fuel, for the companies selling it. And this is the part that should concern you, because the warnings were there well before the crisis hit. Shell's CEO, Wael Sawan, had cautioned weeks in advance that Europe, including the UK, would feel the full impact once the last tankers loaded before the strait closure reached shore. Those tankers take 3 to 5 weeks to arrive. Once they unloaded, nothing was behind them. Asda's executive chairman, Alan Layton, confirmed in late March that demand across the supermarket's 800 forecourts had surged while supply allocations stayed flat. He acknowledged temporary shortages and tight conditions. By early April, stations in York, Dundee, Fife and parts of Lancashire had run dry. Not because the country had physically run out of fuel, but because demand was outpacing deliveries. The warnings were public. The refinery closures had already happened. And when the shock arrived, there was less capacity to absorb it. Now look at what happened on the corporate side during the same weeks. On April 8th, Shell released its first quarter trading update. Oil trading results were expected to be significantly higher than the previous quarter. Marketing earnings, which include revenue from its global network of petrol stations, were also expected to be significantly higher year on year. Refining margins had climbed from $14 per barrel to $17. Shell's $3.5 billion share buyback program was on track to complete by month's end, and analysts expected another to follow when full results land on May 7th. To understand the scale of what Shell returns to its shareholders, consider this. While you are paying £105 to fill your tank, in 2025 alone, Shell handed $22.4 billion back to shareholders, split between $13.9 billion in buybacks and $8.5 billion in dividends. That was 52% of its operating cash flow. Over the past 3 years, Shell has bought back more than a fifth of its own stock, and CEO Wael Sawan's total compensation for 2025 reached £13.8 million, a 60% increase over the prior year, despite a 22% fall in annual profits. That package included £9.1 million in long-term share awards and a £2.7 million bonus. Shell's own annual report noted that total pay would have been higher were it not for 4 fatal workplace accidents in Argentina, Malaysia, and Britain during the year. BP's financial position is different, but the projected windfall follows the same pattern. Full-year 2025 profits came in at $7.5 billion, down from nearly $9 billion the year before. BP carries approximately $22 billion in net debt and has suspended its buyback program to rebuild the balance sheet. Its previous CEO was removed in December 2025. Meg O'Neill, the first woman and the first external appointment to lead the company in 116 years, took charge in April 2026. Goldman Sachs expects her first quarterly results, due April 29th, to reflect the same elevated conditions lifting Shell. And here is where the full picture comes together. A family filling a 55-litre diesel tank once a week is now paying roughly £26 more per fill-up than 6 weeks ago. Over a full year at that rate, that amounts to an additional £1,352 in fuel costs alone. Meanwhile, Shell distributed $22.4 billion to shareholders in 2025, and its CEO earned £13.8 million. Goldman Sachs projects both companies will earn £5 billion more than previously expected this year. And the fuel duty increase has not even started yet, because that is the next layer of pressure already locked in. The 5 pence per litre fuel duty cut, introduced in 2022, stays in place until August 31st. After that, the government has confirmed a phased reversal. Duty rises by 1 pence on September the 1st, 2 pence on December 1st, and a further 2 pence on March 1st, 2027, returning the rate to 57.95 pence per litre. For a family filling up weekly, that adds roughly £143 a year on top of whatever the market price happens to be. And the government is already collecting more as prices climb. According to petrol prices, rising fuel costs have added approximately £6.4 million per day in additional VAT receipts. On the same day Shell released its trading update, a 2-week ceasefire between the US and Iran sent Brent crude down 13% to $94.75, its largest single-day drop since April 2020. By the next morning, prices had recovered above $98 because Iran was still controlling access to the strait despite the agreement. The spot price for physical cargoes of Brent sat at $124.68, nearly $30 above the futures contract. Financial markets reacted to the ceasefire. Physical oil supply did not. That gap tells you where things actually stand. Diesel remains at 191.1 pence per litre. Shell and BP are tracking toward one of their strongest earnings periods since 2022. The UK has 4 refineries left. Fuel duty increases begin in 5 months. And for the households, commuters, and small businesses absorbing these costs week after week, the arithmetic has not changed. You are paying more, they are earning more, and nothing in the current system is built to close that gap.